Hey friends, are you looking for a delicious Sunday dinner that will feed a crowd? Well, not only is this healthy, but it is so tasty. And if you're not feeding a crowd, you'll definitely have plenty for the week ahead. And this menu is just pennies to make for your family. Hi friends, welcome to Finance Working Mama, and thanks for joining me today. I'm going to share with you guys our Sunday dinner, and I'm making hopefully a wonderful Sunday dinner for tonight and then leftovers for the nights ahead during the following week. So let's get started. Now, the best deal that you can find in the grocery store is a whole pork loin. Don't confuse it with a pork tenderloin. Tenderloins usually come in a package, and there's usually two slender piece of tenderloins in that one package. This is a loin. It's just one large loin. And the best part about this, if you buy it whole, then you can slice it into like pork chops. Or even cube it up. It is the most affordable way to buy pork, for that matter, and lean pork, because you can trim it up, you can dice it, you can slice it, and today we're going to actually do an entire pork roast, and I want to share with you a new recipe that I found, and I'm dying to try out. The first thing that the recipe calls for is to oil your roast, and then you want to salt and pepper your roast. You get the pepper on there. And I asked my husband, what do you want for Sunday dinner? And he said, I want pork chops. And then I said, pork chops. Okay. Well, then I went in the freezer and I saw this entire pork loin, and I'm like, oh, winner. Not only are we going to have pork for dinner for what he requested, because again, friends, if you buy this whole, you can slice it up to the thickness that you want, and you can have your pork chops. It'll just be a pork loin chop. So I'm going to get 2 dinners out of this pork, at least 2 dinners out of this big pork loin. I'm thinking I'll probably get at least maybe 3 dinners, and I'll just put the meat with something different. Add some more olive oil to this, some salt. This is a large. This is actually, the recipe calls for 3 pounds. This is about 3.6 pounds. So it is a nice piece of meat. What do I do this? I can make pork sandwiches off of leftovers. I've also cut up and done like pork tacos or fajitas, slice them up differently. There's lots of different ways you could use leftover pork loin. All right, so I got that nice and seasoned. I'm gonna put it in my greased baking dish, and I'm going to, I'm not going to trim off the fat because there's not too much of it in here. It's pretty much a thin layer, and I believe that fat's going to give it nice flavor. This is called a herb crusted pork loin, and we're not going to fry it. We're going to bake it. It does call for panko breadcrumbs. I'm using the Italian style. It has Italian herbs in it. If you have plain's fine. I just always feel like more flavor the better. So 1 cup of panko into your dish. This is 1 tablespoon of chopped thyme, 2 tablespoons of chopped rosemary, and 1/4 of a cup of parsley, finely chopped together. It is all fresh. It is not dried. If you were in a pinch, I'm sure that dry spices would be fine. I would say probably less of the dry, probably half. If it calls for a tablespoon of thyme, I'd probably just do like a half of a tablespoon, because dried spices can be a little bit more potent than fresh. And then it calls for 2 garlic cloves pressed. And now I did 3 because I felt like 2 of them were too teeny and too skinny. And we like garlic in this house. If you're not a garlic fan, you don't have to add it. You do want to mix this in really, really well. So this is going to be sort of like, this is the breading to the pork loin. And this pork loin is not going to be fried or seared in the pan before going in the oven. It is simply packed very tightly onto the pork loin and then placed in the oven and cooked. It has a glaze that you put on it towards the end of the cook time. All right, friends, I am going to spray this very liberal. I can't say the word today. I'm going to spray a lot of oil on this pork loin. See my puppy. She had surgery and she has to wear that dreadful collar. I can't wait for her to get it off. All right, so we're just going to spread this on. And we're going to pack it on there. Pack it as much, use all of it. Pack all of it on there because you want a nice crust on this roast. I'm just going to pour it all in there. Friends, all you need to do now is preheat your oven to 375 and let it cook for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, then you want to apply the glaze. And what is in the glaze? All you need to do is mix together a half a cup of apple cider vinegar, 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard, and then 1 tablespoon of honey. Get that really mixed well, and then you just want to apply a nice glaze on top of it. Brush it on very, very carefully because you don't want any of that delicious crust to fall off. Then you want to put it back into the oven for an additional 20 minutes and let it cook. You should cook it for about another 20 minutes, and then that's when you want to pull it out and test the temperature. You want the temperature to be about 145 degrees. That's when you know it is ready to come out and be safely eaten for your family. Now, if you have a bigger roast or a smaller roast, I'd probably ensure that you check a smaller roast. I'd probably put it in for about 15 minutes and check because you don't want an overcooked pork loin. If you have a larger roast, you probably will need to cook it for an additional 10 to 15 minutes. But you want a temperature of 145 degrees. Once you have your pork roast completely cooked, then you want to add the rest of that glaze, brush it onto the pork roast, and let it stand about 10 minutes before slicing it to eat. All right, friends, I forgot to hit the record button on my salad that I was making. So I will let you know what all is in it. I first boiled 1.5 cups of water and then measured out 1 cup of quinoa and then 1 teaspoon of salt, and I put all that in the pot and let it cook. It took probably about 15 minutes, and then once it's done, I just fluffed it up and then let it get to a warm, not hot, I just wanted it warm. And then I chopped up 2 Persian cucumbers, a cup of tomatoes, and 1/4 cup of red onions, and then 1/4 cup of parsley. I will tell you the parsley, it calls for cilantro, but I was going to buy another ingredient. I always keep parsley on hand, so I just chose to use parsley. And that's what makes up the salad: quinoa, tomatoes, cucumbers, onions, and parsley. Now, the dressing is extremely simple. Probably all the ingredients you already have on hand. So you want to do 1/4 cup of olive oil, 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar, half of a lemon. The recipe calls for lime, but I only have lemon, so I'm just going to use lemon. And then you want to do 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard, as well as a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and a 1/2 teaspoon of oregano. Whisk really well, and then just dress your salad. This salad, I'm several hours away from dinner, so this will be perfect, especially when you have time for it to all like marinate together. This will be perfect. And friends, I am praying and I'm sure that I will have some leftovers for the week. Okay, friends, I want to share with you a side dish that I'm also going to serve with the pork loin roast, along with the salad. And that is sort of like a potato, green bean, mushroom, a side dish that I decided to like throw all together because I had some left vegetables, meaning the green beans, the potatoes, and the mushrooms that all needed to use up. And I'm making a lot of it in hopes that I'll have some leftovers for next week. So all I have to do is just pull out the outside and add a protein. So basically what I did, I took some red potatoes that I found on hand. I cut them in large chunks because I wanted them not to be small. I wanted to control the cook temp on them. I wanted to give them sort of like boiled, not quite completely done, but soften. And when you cook them whole like that, it works a lot better. I boiled them with some salt because you want those potatoes nicely seasoned before even adding them to something else. And then I chopped them up and set them to the side. Into a frying pan, I did slice up some mushrooms, some white mushrooms that I found in my crisper that really needed to use up. I sliced them pretty thin. Now to my cast iron pan, I did add the mushrooms, sliced mushrooms in olive oil, sauteed those really nicely. And then once I got it to the type of texture I wanted, then I added about a teaspoon of the garlic to the pan. Heated that up for about 30 seconds till I smelt the aroma of garlic. And that's when I added my entire bag of frozen green beans. I did the slender long green beans. We love those. And I added that to the pan, everything. It was a little thawed when I put it in there, so I had a little bit of water, which was completely fine because I do want to get those green beans a little steamed before I decide to add the potatoes. And when I add the potatoes, I mix the vegetables up really, really well and then add some salt, some pepper, and this sort of like Italian seasoning that has tarragon and lavender and basil in it that I found at Lidl, which is a grocery store near us. I put that in, seasoned them up really well, and then I topped it, friends. I topped it with a little bit of Parmesan and then put it in the oven at 375 and then just let it cook for about 15 more minutes. And it was ready to serve. All right, friends, that is another Sunday dinner for the books. Everyone enjoyed it. Most importantly, my husband got the pork chop, but it was a pork loin roast, but the pork that he wanted and so much enjoyed. The best part is I have plenty for dinners in the week, which is wonderful. I have enough salad left over. I have enough side dishes of the green beans, potatoes, and mushrooms, and then of course that pork loin. And I'll mix it up. I'll do different things with them during the week, so it won't be like having a Sunday dinner again. So, friends, this was a very affordable dinner to put together. So if you are wanting to host your family or friends for either Sunday dinner, Sunday lunch, or even just for an evening, it is probably the best budget-friendly meal plan that you could put together. And it only cost me that much. That's not bad. When you have 3.6 pounds of meat and all those veggies and this delicious side salad, you can't beat that. Thank you, friends, for joining me today. And I hope you guys have a phenomenal week. Make sure you stay safe and most importantly, stay encouraged.